Damn, it's been a rough month, huh? Well, guess it's time for another Lance Stroll video then. I was actually getting worried in 2025, as Special here was looking rather not awful. Well, ignoring Suzuka, that is. Round 1, the paddock is busy drowning in Isaac Hadjar's tears, and our boy keeps it out of the wall and ends up coming home in 6th place. Granted, strategy played its role in that, but Stroll still delivered the goods when it mattered, and let's not forget what he got up to last time it decided to rain. A second points finish in China followed, and a third of the way through the season, he'd added a 5th place in the Miami Sprint to his 11th in the standings, all while Fernando Alonso was busy being unlucky, a driver coin term for consistently shit. All of a sudden, F1 YouTubers around the world were on panic stations. Who were they going to take the piss out of now? Then we were reminded the second Red Bull exists, but in all seriousness, this could have been a massive turning point in this guy's career. Then, as the season goes on, Fernando begins to find a bit of momentum, on a Saturday anyway, and Stroll begins to fall back into the role that we expect him in. Then we get to the Spanish Grand Prix, and it all seems to go to pot. Following a quiet trio of practice sessions, Stroll found himself half a second off Alonso in Q2, enough of a gap to see the Spaniard sneak into the top 10 shootout, and Lance go out in 14th. That wasn't abnormal for the Canadian, and a definite improvement on his Monaco performance, where Special used all of his skill and talent to start on the back row of the grid. Later that afternoon, though, Aston Martin released the following statement. Over the course of the past 6 weeks, Lance has been experiencing pain in his hand and wrist, which his medical consultant believes is in relation to the procedure he underwent in 2023. As a result, his medical team have confirmed that he will not race tomorrow, and he will undergo a procedure to rectify these issues before focusing on his recovery. To provide some added context here, this injury originated just ahead of the 2023 preseason, when Special here thought he was so good at driving on 4 wheels, he couldn't be any more incompetent if he tried it out on 2. He subsequently fell off his bike, lost a lot of his pre-season preparation, and turned up to the opening race of the season trying to drive with just one hand and looking like an old-age pensioner getting out of the car. Or maybe this is his Fernando Alonso impression, who knows. The statement from the team immediately raised questions though. Given the timing of the withdrawal, reserve driver Felipe Drugovich will be unable to take Lance's spot on the starting grid for Sunday. This also coincided with Stroll breaching protocol and being called to a meeting by the FIA following his elimination from qualifying. Drivers are meant to be weighed as soon as they get out of the car. They're not allowed to do anything that might influence that weight either, be that take a drink or theoretically take a shit. Explains why a pre-race vindaloo isn't a thing, I guess. Stroll, despite abiding by this for the last 8 years he's terrorised the sport, decided this time he just didn't fancy it for some reason, spending 5 minutes in the garage, then leaving it via the exit to the paddock as opposed to the pit lane. Exactly what he allegedly did in those 5 minutes we'll get to later, but while the stewards prepared their variety of spanking devices, the team informed them that Special would not be attending due to his injury we mentioned earlier. This news was very much drowned out, however, by the outpouring of support from the Formula 1 fan base, which is not something I ever expected to say about Special here. As far as they saw it, not only had this guy scored 100% of Aston Martin's points for this season, he'd also done so with a pre-existing injury, and I'm sure that's the story Aston would want you to believe, though as things turned out, it wasn't quite that simple. As reported by the BBC, Stroll would in fact be missing the Spanish Grand Prix in the aftermath of losing his temper in the team's garage. According to the article, those 5 minutes in the garage saw Stroll damage equipment and swear at crew members in a tirade that re-aggravated his wrist injury from 2023 and sapped any sympathy out of the window faster than his Q2 qualifying lap. Actually, that's a rubbish analogy given how f***ing slow it was in the first place. The team had ample opportunity to deny this, and while they rejected claims he completely lost his shit, they did say, quote, Lance was upset, which literally sounds like you're talking about a man-child, doesn't it? It's also hard to believe, given this isn't the first time Stroll's been caught aggressive in the garage. Following his Q1 exit in the 2023 Qatar Grand Prix, the Canadian decided it was acceptable to use his personal trainer as his latest gym machine. This saw Lance put under investigation by the FIA's compliance officer as he was forced to issue an apology, as well as received a written warning going forwards, reminding Special of his responsibilities as a competitor bound by the FIA Code of Ethics, or in other words, don't be a silly little c***. Whether anything will come out of this latest tantrum remains to be seen, but following a string of seasons where his status on the grid has been called more and more into question, this really doesn't help, does it? There's no point in discussing that anyway, as Lance Stroll will be in Formula 1 until he either gets bored or Lawrence Stroll runs out of money, and unfortunately neither of those look like they'll be happening anytime soon. What may well be called into question, however, is Lance's ability to compete at his home Grand Prix in 2 weeks' time. The last wrist injury we saw in Formula 1 was Daniel Ricciardo at the 2023 Dutch Grand Prix, and that saw the Aussie miss out on 5 Grand Prix as Liam Lawson stepped in and ended the Honey Badger's career. Now just bear with me as I go and cry for a bit again. So then, who replaces Lance Stroll if he can't compete in Montreal? And while the obvious answer might still seem like Felipe Drugovich, it may not necessarily be that straightforward. The 2022 Formula 2 champion has come close to stepping into the Aston Martin on many occasions, but a bit like this race just gone, logistics or bad luck, or Stroll being ready when he quite clearly isn't, have always got in the way. That may look set to continue, as the Brazilian is scheduled to be competing in the World Endurance Championship during the Canadian Grand Prix weekend. The same applies to ex-McLaren reject and Formula E world champion Stoffel Vandoorne, who also sits in Aston's pool of possible reserves. So who does that leave then? Well, one potential option could be junior driver and ex-Marco slave Jack Crawford. The American has slowly been building momentum over the last 3 years in Formula 2, and as of right now sits fourth in the standings with 3 podiums and 2 race wins to his name. The downside, well, 3 seasons in Formula 2 was about as confidence-filling as stepping on a Boeing airliner. Previous F1 drivers with that same accolade include names like Guan Yu Slow or Nicholas Latifi. So are there any better options? Well, actually, yes there are, as Aston could instead ignore their own reserves and look to the pool of their engine supplier Mercedes. The most obvious pick here would be Valtteri Bottas. It's no secret the Finn is looking for a way back onto the grid following his culling from Sauber at the end of last season, and with it looking like a straight fight between him and the Mexican Minister of Mid for one of the Cadillac seats in 2026, that could be the perfect opportunity for him to stake his claim. Plus he has plenty of experience when it comes to driving shitty green Formula 1 cars. There is one potential hiccup after taking out 3 years of pent-up frustration in the form of Kevin Magnussen in the last race of 2024. Bottas does have a 5-place grid drop looming over him for whenever he makes his next Grand Prix start. That said, that's out of the garage, he used to start on the back row at this point anyway. Who does that leave then? Well, there's always Mick Schumacher. Sorry, no, I'm just joking with you. So at the end of the day, what conclusions can we take from all this? Well, Special has given us yet another reason to hate on him. Aston Martin probably need to fire their head of PR, and this whole dilemma could inadvertently shake up the driver market, with candidates hoping to make a late impression getting the potential call-up for Canada. That being said, let this all blow over and see Special back in the car for his home Grand Prix, only for him to go out in Q1 again. Let me know what you think of the whole situation down in the comments section below, and if you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate you dropping it a like and getting subscribed for more in the future. Despite the joke at the beginning of the vid, the support recently has been absolutely mega, so thanks for all the love. Now bring on 200k by the end of 2025. If you want to hear me talk more about Aston Martin, I made a video on Alonso's shaky start to the season a few weeks back. That's one of the bits of exclusive content only available to patrons and channel members, so if you're interested in that or just want to further support me in the channel, head down to the links in the description below. But that's all from me for now. I'll be back soon with another video. Until then, have a good one.